What's up, gamers? Welcome to Video Game Gems, the show where we look at a game that went the extra mile and immerse the player in an unforgettable adventure to answer the big question: is it a gem? I'm Ginge the Ripper. Let's play a game. Today we're looking at a game from my favorite franchise, a hidden gem called Ys Chronicles 1. Created by Nihon Falcom, Ys Chronicles 1 is the final remake of Ys 1 Ancient Ys Vanished. To save time, I'll be referring to this game as Ys 1 for the remainder of the video. This game went through a lot of remakes, trust me on this one, guys. You play as Adol Kristen, a swordsman who travels to the land of Asteria to uncover its mysteries. The answers lie in 6 books that tell the story of Ys, a kingdom that vanished long ago. Uncovering the secrets of the past may resolve Asteria's problems. Starting up the game, we can choose between 2 versions, Ys Chronicles and Ys Complete. Ys Chronicles was originally released in Japan as Ys Complete, and eventually released to the West as Ys Chronicles with a few updates, but we'll cover them later. The game kicks off with a beautiful opening cinematic. It gives the player an idea of what to expect, as well as a small prologue and a look at the main protagonist for the first time. If you stop and look at Adol, you'll notice he doesn't stick out. Sure, he's a little cool looking, but he's not wearing any flashy clothing or sporting any crazy hairstyles. He's just a normal character. Adol was designed this way to relate to the player. He's just an average person like the rest of us. The game drills these concepts into your head before you start playing. The game starts with Adol waking up in a clinic after washing ashore on a nearby beach. He quickly becomes acquainted with the family running the clinic while he recovers. Adol was left for dead after his ship sank and barely survived. It takes Adol several days to recover before he's back on his feet. Now the player has an idea of what kind of game Ys 1 is, and can finally take control of the character. Ys 1 is a quick-paced game. It features a playstyle known as the bump system. You bump into enemies at an angle to deal damage. If you attack an enemy head-on, then you're the one that takes damage. You can also attack enemies from behind and deal more damage, but they die pretty quickly, so there's almost no point. Other games in the series have moved on to the hack-and-slash style. Ys Chronicles 1 and 2 kept the bump system for nostalgia. Many of the earlier games used the bump system and were well received by fans, so bringing it back for these 2 remakes was a nice touch. There are many different ways to heal in the game. You can use potions, go to a clinic, or stationary heal. Stationary healing allows you to recover quickly and efficiently without having to go back to town. Stationary healing won't work in dungeons until you find the necessary item. As you fight, you level up and get stronger, like a typical RPG. But leveling up in Ys 1 doesn't take very long. You can even reach max level before finishing the first dungeon. The second dungeon is already available from the start, so you can grind to your heart's content. The bosses in this game aren't very difficult, save for a few of them. Screw you, vampire boss! And you too, whatever you are! It might take you a couple tries to figure out how to defeat each boss, but once you get the hang of it, they're pushovers. Even the final boss is pretty easy. We can't talk about an Ys game without talking about the music. The music in this game is fantastic. The game is filled with tracks that match the aesthetic of the world. Take a listen. There are actually 3 versions of each track: a Chronicles version, a complete version, and the original PC-88 version. You can switch between the versions at any time in the game. My favorite part about this game has to be the characters. Everyone has their own sprite, their own name, and their own personality. The game doesn't have very many characters overall, so adding this detail makes the world feel more realistic. This game is full of memorable characters. Dr. Bluto and Nurse Ayla run the clinic in the first town, Barbados. They were nice enough to nurse Adol back to health and lets him stay and rest whenever he wants. Their son Slav is the one who found Adol on the beach and rescued him. He's also the leader of the town's militia, a group responsible for protecting Barbados from monster attacks. Sarah is a fortune teller in the second town, Minia, whose job is to serve as Adol's guide throughout his adventure. Sarah's Aunt Jaba lives in the third village, Zapik. She also plays an important role in the story. These are 5 characters you meet before you enter the first dungeon. Characters that you establish a connection with and confide in when you're stuck or need help. You meet tons of others on your journey through Asteria, making you feel like Asteria is your home and gives you another reason to want to help them. Every important character, as well as a few others, have illustrations that pop up when you talk to them. Actually, they each have 2. Updated illustrations for Chronicles, and the original illustrations from Complete. Once again, you can switch between the 2 art styles at any point in the game. Ys 1 is all about exploration. It encourages you to explore the world and rewards you for it. The game starts you off with just enough money to buy a sword and armor from the weapon shop. If you look around Minia before equipping yourself, you'll find a one-eyed man in the tavern who lost an expensive ring he bought for his wife. Visit the item shop to learn that the shady shopkeeper stole the ring and will resell it to you for all your money. Take the ring back to the one-eyed man and he rewards you with enough money to buy a sword, armor, and a shield. Alternatively, if you talk to everyone in Barbados before leaving for the first time, Slav will give you a free short sword. You'll have to explore all the ins and outs of dungeons if you want to beat this game. This makes the game tedious if you're not a fan of exploration. For example, there are 4 important items hidden in the second dungeon, 3 of which are needed to beat the game. After finding them, you have to exit the dungeon and do a short side quest before you can beat the boss. So, is Ys 1 a perfect game? No way, a perfect game does not exist. With that being said, there really isn't anything bad I have to say about it, but there are some things I dislike about it. Small things they could change that could improve the game. In the first dungeon, you find an item called the Mask of Eyes, which allows you to see hidden passages. The mask is only used twice in the game, once in the first dungeon, and once again in the final dungeon. In the original game, the mask was only used in the final dungeon. It makes sense why they would add another hidden passage in the first dungeon, because it doesn't make sense to give you the item early on otherwise. However, the mask is only used for story progression. These are the only 2 places it can actually be used. There are no other hidden passages to look for. The mask has more potential and it wasn't utilized. Another dislike I have about the game is that there's no minimap. It's not really a big issue. With the exception of the Rastan Mines, the world is pretty small and the dungeons aren't very confusing. But it would be nice to have a map that tells you what floor you're on and keeps track of the chests you've opened. Does Ys 1 have any replay value? Absolutely. The game isn't very long. If you know what you're doing, the game can be beaten in 7 hours, even if you're following the narrative. The game's controls aren't hard to learn, and it's fun to revisit when you have time to kill. Before we end the video, I have a few fun facts for you guys. There's a collaboration anime for both Ys 1 and 2 called Ys Legacy, but for this video I'll only be covering Ys 1. The anime is really well done. There are a few minor differences in the narrative, but it ultimately stays true to the first game and adds more detail and emotion. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a fan of the series, or planning on getting into the series, or just an anime lover in general. The only problem I have with the anime is that the names of certain characters and places are a little off. The Ys games are notorious for constantly changing story and information, so I'm not sure if these differences were accurate back then or just mistranslations. Either way, they don't take away from the experience. Some of the characters look different from their illustrations in-game, but the anime released a few years after the original game, and a lot of the characters didn't have official artwork, so I give this a pass. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this game is not canonically the first game in the series. Falcom released a game called Ys Origin in 2006 that takes place 100 years prior to Ys 1. If you're thinking about getting into the series, I highly recommend you play Ys Chronicles 1 and 2 before Origin. Origin has a lot of spoilers and cool Easter eggs that will ruin 1 and 2 for you if you don't play them first. Finally, is Ys Chronicles 1 a gem? Ys 1 is a game that shows a little goes a long way, that quality is more important than quantity. The smallest details can enhance a gaming experience and bring the world to life. It has a smooth, fast-paced gameplay, catchy music, and beautiful artwork that immerses its players. A story about a young man who seeks adventure, who experiences friendship, love, and loss along the way. Ys 1 is a fantastic game on its own, but it's incomplete. The original game released for Windows back in the 80s. The story was too big to fit on one disc, so they chopped off the ending, expanded on it, and turned it into a sequel. I can't give Ys Chronicles 1 a proper rating without talking about Ys Chronicles 2, which we will look at in a part 2 video I will begin working on as soon as I'm finished with this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep on gaming. Also, what's your favorite franchise? Let me know in the comments below.